and what a doozy it was as well. But of course, we did do Saturday Roundup for you and put that up online. However, if you've missed it, we will be going over a few bits of that again tonight. But there are many, many things that we need to talk about tonight. And some of the stuff that we have to talk about is quite remarkable and also quite ridiculous. And the very first place we have to start is with the trilateral talks. I do apologise. Let's just try and sort that picture out for you there. The trilateral talks, of course, have been absolutely amazing. And we have got the everything that is going on there. We're going to talk about that with Lembit Opik in a second. We're just going to bring Lembit onto the show. And of course, we're going to have a chat with that, of course, to do with Lembit and everything else, because we have our friend who's very close to Peskov, Dmitry Peskov. That is, just in case you didn't know, that is Vladimir Putin's personal spokesman. Good evening, Lembit. How the devil are you?
Very pleased to see you, and I hope you're going to say we can go and interview said man at some point. That would be great.
I am so looking forward to that. I think it's going to be absolutely great. We're definitely going to be interviewing shall we say, an ambassador from China. So that is something Lembit and I are both hugely looking forward to. And of course, we'll bring you the more details on that as we firm them up. But shall we say, preliminary, we've been granted an interview at the Chinese embassy. So Lembit and I Lembit will be traveling over, and we'll be going to go and speak to them.
If you can get Peskov as well, I'll even buy you a drink while I'm there.
Well, we've got a friend of Peskov who has told us everything that has gone on at these trilateral talks, Lembit. So let's get into the first of these. So let's hear literally what the Americans have had to say, and they've had to say plenty. Now, the first thing we're going to knock on the head for you right now, so that there is no more nonsense about it. There is an article from Politico stating sources that were in the room that the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be shared between the Russians and the American, and half the energy will be given to Ukraine. The Russians have given no such assurances and have not discussed that in the slightest. The Russians have the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. And we have this from our man who's very close to Peskov, turns around and says that under no circumstances will any of, they don't mind selling some of that energy on, but at no point will the Ukrainians or the USA be responsible or take any part whatsoever in running that facility, Lembit. But Politico have come out, say all guns blazing and saying, oh, the Russians have agreed to this and we're going to do that and we're going to do this and we're going to do that and everything will be absolutely fine. And these talks went swimmingly well. The talks didn't go swimmingly well. There was very frank exchange, including Russian real anger at the attack on the Putin residence. And the Russians have not moved their position one iota, Lembit.
Yeah, this is the typical politics of the amateur. They think that by saying something, they bully the other side into agreeing to it. It's a bit like when a man keeps saying to everyone that his girlfriend's agreed to him buying a new Jag, say, and they eventually get to the showroom. He says, "This is the one I want." She says, "Well, no." He says, but you said that you agreed. He said, "No, you said that I agreed." And it's just exactly the same. They say, "Oh, well, no, they've agreed, they've agreed, they've agreed." Russia's very, very straightforward on this. Three things: denazification of Ukraine, demilitarization of Ukraine, and no NATO membership. That's it. Now, it's got a bit tougher now because Russia's got so fed up. They're saying, actually, no, we're going to increase our demands here because we've had enough. Yes. But that's what they've demanded. There is no prospect of Russia making concessions until they get what they want. So even if that was on the cards, it wouldn't be on the cards now until the West, which is the West and all its blabbermouths who say things straight away and try to megaphone negotiate their way to success. Uh, until those people actually agree to those three demands, there is nothing on the table. It's all
No.
completely off. But they think that they can bounce Russia. Somebody needs to take a look at the history of Russia across the last 200 years, or 300 years, actually, certainly since Napoleon, and they might get a slightly better reality check.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that is very, very important, Lembit. We're going to get into this because I know that very much along those lines, your friend and mine, of course. Dmitry was very, very cruel on one particular aspect. Dmitry Peskov has turned around and said there can be no talks with the European Union under any circumstances whatsoever until Kaya Kallas is removed from her position. Neither us or the United States wish to engage in talk with her under any circumstances, Lem.
Well, they've said what we've all been thinking. Why would you have somebody who's not competent to do the job whenever this is a matter of life and death? And so I'm sorry to say this woman has been something of a laughing stock for a long time. I'm sorry to say that, but she's unable to think objectively. She acts in a childish manner. She obviously gets nervous when she's with powerful people and spills drinks over them. That in itself is excusable, but if you add it up all together, what you really see is somebody who, like so many European politicians, is completely out of their depth. The only reason she doesn't look worse is because the other ones do.
Well, should we say the Gauleiter, or should we say Callas's boss, turning around and saying what she wanted out of these talks, and of course she was pushing the Ukrainians, and of course everybody else in the West was pushing the Ukrainians. The head of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen,
Mm.
Callas, and Macron all got together and decided they were going to have a bit of fun. Macron wanted and Callas wanted an energy ceasefire, and of course Ursula von der Leyen wants an 800 billion package that she has sorted out with guess who? BlackRock, of course. And of course, the Russians have turned around and said that there's no chance of an energy ceasefire for the simple fact that the Kiev is in darkness most nights, and these drones are right up there with some of the things that they want to do. The big losers in this, because our friend, who's very close to Peskov, has said that, and I quote, Peskov actually turned round and said, "We are not like Europe. We will not roll over and do whatever the Americans ask us to do." This is obviously a reference to the EU and NATO rolling over and just handing over Greenland over Denmark's head, Lembit.
They haven't exactly done that, but they looked ridiculous. What you have to understand about Donald Trump is he says stuff which he doesn't mean, but he's interested to see the result. And then he'll change what he says and triangulate it based on what other people say. But because we have a bunch of fools in Western politics, they run around taking everything he says literally. The Greenland thing is quite interesting. It's a more complicated situation because of some very clever work done by a diplomat in around 1943 or somewhere around then, which really kind of showed that there's more to what Donald Trump is saying than meets the eye. When it comes to Europe, though, they're irrelevant. Keir Starmer said, I called Donald Trump and I said that Donald, no, you cannot have Greenland." It went on about how he had personally, single-handedly achieved this result. Well, no, he said that others had helped as well. He had no influence in it whatever. He's completely irrelevant. What he said doesn't matter because Trump doesn't care. Trump will take the easiest route forward. And for some reason, he's really obsessed with this Greenland thing. I don't completely know why. But putting all that together, you got nobody's like Gaia Callas and Macron and Zelensky. They're not important people. They're just not important people. So Greenland could go into Donald's hands, but the best way for him to do it is to say, I'll give you 10 million each if you agree to it. 25,000 households. So, 25,000, 250, quarter of a trillion. That wouldn't be bad for a big piece of land. I bet you if you offered each household $10 million, they'd take it.
Yeah, and of course Peskov has turned around and, as has been said in the chat, has literally called the European politicians completely incompetent and therefore of no real value whatsoever in any talks that we might have. There's something else that is, I mean, we need to sort of deal with this straight away. And this is obviously we've spoken a lot, Lembit, about BlackRock and their involvement with Ukraine and everything else. And of course, there is this rather idiotic 800 billion that's going to be put forward. So let's just tell you about that. So BlackRock has eyed Ukraine's post-conflict future as the US and EU prep cash flow. Now, the US and the EU are laying the groundwork to mobilize 800 billion in public and private capital to rebuild Ukraine after the conflict ends, with the world's largest asset manager now closely involved, as it always was, in shaping what comes next. Now, an 18-page strategy report sketches out a 10-year recovery plan aimed at turning Ukraine into a self-sustaining EU candidate with accelerated membership on the table. The document was quietly circulated among EU capitals ahead of the January 22nd Leaders Summit. And of course, we've got party to that. Now, the blueprint is part of a broader, that 20-point peace plan that we were telling you about, that the US is trying to broker between Russia and Ukraine. Now, the long-term funding plan runs through 2040, starting with an aggressive 100-day launch phase to kick things off. It assumes security guarantees are already in place and is explicitly not a military roadmap, but keeping the focus on economics. The US is cast not as a donor, but as a strategic partner, investor, and credibility backstop, with US companies expected to play a hands-on role and help unlock private capital. So over the next decade, the EU, the US, the IMF, the World Bank and other institutions aim to deploy 500 billion in combined and public and private funds. On top of that, the European Commission plans to channel 118 billion through budget support and investment guarantees starting in 2028, money expected to unlock roughly 244 billion more in private investment. The US, meanwhile, plans to mobilize capital via a US Ukraine reconstruction investment fund. It has to be sequenced, and that takes time. Now, this is in the document, and we've seen the Vice Chairman, Philip Hildebrand, told this to the WEF in 2026. And of course, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has sat in on peace-related discussions with Ukraine alongside Jared Kushner and Trump's special envoy, Witkoff. Now, Lembit, this assumes that everybody is going to do exactly what the Americans want and the Europeans want, and there's going to be a peace deal. There's going to be US troops and lots of NATO troops in there, ensuring that there's no more bother inside Ukraine. Can you see that happening?
No, no chance of it. Too many things have to happen. And back to the previous point, there's no motivation for Russia, which is winning the war hands down, to give in to this nonsense. Why would they? So it's the politics of wistful thinking, this tangibly childish assumption that somehow the Russians will give in and go, oh, okay, then if you say that in public often enough, we don't want to look silly. Every day that goes by, Russia is gaining ground. Ukraine is losing ground, and soldiers and motivation and military resources and goodwill everywhere else. So, no, it's not going to happen. Back to the same point. I could negotiate for Russia. No Nazification in Ukraine, demilitarization of Ukraine, no NATO membership. After that, you got a deal, and this is the bit of land we want. And this bit of land's going to be more if you carry on screwing me around. And off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So let's be absolutely clear what they went with. America went with an economic package to try and woo, shall we say, Russia into agreeing Now, there is a branch. We're not talking about Witkoff, Kushner, and Trump here. We're talking about the branch of Rubio, Susie Weiss, and obviously the CIA with Radcliffe and everybody else who genuinely think that if they can get rid of Putin, if they can kill Putin, get rid of Putin, that things will suddenly become better, and then there won't be a problem, and they'll be able to negotiate their way out of it, which is crazy thinking. And then you've got the Witkoff, Kushner, Trump, who are trying to get an economic deal, and the Russians aren't buying it. They want, as America started this war, they want, before there's any talk of economics, they're quite happy to sit and talk, because while they're sitting and talking, nothing's actually getting done. Ukraine are refusing to do any territorial movement whatsoever, Lembit. NATO, they're saying they still want to be part of NATO. So, of course, nobody really wants the Ukrainians there because it's just scuppering anything that the Americans might be putting forward. But behind the scenes, Europe are working the crank with Zelensky. And, of course, the Russians are just at the point now where they're just going, sit and talk. But they actually sent a military advisor rather than people who actually thrash out. And this is a really good pointer, Lembit, to the fact that the Russians are just like, okay, we'll just send it. They're going to be sending the cleaning lady by the end of the year.
The very sad thing, which the mainstream media unquestioningly report, is this. Oh, too many lives have been lost in Donbass for Ukraine to stop now. Just like, as I've said before, I've lost too much money in this casino to leave now. And the only outcome is going to be more deaths. I actually put an X out on this, and I'll read it to you because it sums up my feelings completely, and got quite a lot of hits actually. And it's sad. I mean, I don't say this with any joy. It's heartbreaking, really, to see all of this, because you just end up. Well, I won't find it quickly. I simply said Zelensky's unwillingness to admit he's losing means countless more lives will be lost until he has to give up the Donbass anyway. He has to give up the Donbass because he's going to lose it anyway.
Yeah.
He's going to lose it anyway, but he'll just either lose it now with the death toll as it is, or lose it later with a higher death toll. And just note again, all these Willy Wonkers in European politics who don't understand any of this, they are beginning to get cold feet. They're not that keen anymore, are they?
No, absolutely not. Eric Jones.
Well, here's my feeling. I think that Russia was, and by like you said, when they said who they sent with the military, and I went, oh boy. I said they're done, with the playing around. And my feeling is after what they did to Putin, and it was an insult not to even address it. And not only that, not address the three things that they've been asking for right along. At this point, my feeling is Russia's going to take the entire Ukraine and they're going to tell BlackRock to kiss their royal backside. And they're not getting any of that land because that's just going to put America and a NATO right back in there, and they'll be right back in the same mess they're in. I don't see Russia allowing that at this point. And you wait and see. BlackRock's going to be sorely disappointed.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there are some really embarrassing things. We'll get into what Lavrov has got to say in a minute, and you may have seen a little thing that we did on the Garand drones to show you exactly what's going on. But let's have a little taster just of exactly where we are with this, because let's face it, Garand drones and everything that they're doing. So it's about a 5 or 6 minute video. Have a little look at this. And this is something that we put out on Saturday, just to give you a heads up. Hello. If ever you thought that it was a good idea to continue this war against Russia, you couldn't be more mistaken. Please have a look at this.
HIMARS could be game changers.
Say the delivery of HIMARS has been a game changer. These long-range rocket launchers that can fire up to 53 miles
provided multiple launch rocket systems, which have had a huge impact.
Now, there are many of these Garand drones that are available. There are up to 1,000 a day are able to produce this in huge numbers. As I say, 1,000 a day. If you've never seen a Garand drone, there's one for you to have a look at. Now, let's talk a little bit about the HIMARS system, or even indeed the wonderfully vaunted Patriot missile system. And of course, we've all seen how ineffectively stupid that has been in action. And of course, anybody who's seen this HIMARS in action will know full well that, of course, this is being blown out of the air, as is the Patriot systems. There are almost none left inside of Ukraine. Now, the rockets, the HIMARS, cost millions to make. The Patriots cost 3 to 5 million per missile, per rocket, to try and bring down drones that cost in the region of anywhere between £5,000 and £10,000 to make. Now, you only have to do the maths, and the analysis is very, very straightforward. It's an inefficient use of military equipment purchased with taxpayers' money, particularly relevant for the EU countries and the United States, now that the EU has to buy everything from the United States, and of course the military industrial complex are coining it in. If we stop funding foreign countries with our taxes, the money could be better invested in our own people. We're also feeding the military industrial complex, invested instead in the lives and the well-being of our own citizens, rather than destroying somebody else who lives elsewhere. Now, the mass production and widespread use of simple weapons have proved more effective than the reliance on so-called elite or high-tech systems. American elite systems, including, should we say, premium or cutting edge, cost around 5 million, are reportedly destroyed from a few low-cost drones that are worth only 200,000 in all. Now, all it takes is a very simple drone to disable one of these huge systems. It costs so much of your money and my money. Then they can be targeted by artillery once they're disabled from moving anywhere. Now, there is no doubt whatsoever that Russia are winning the war, that they are producing more weapons at cheaper cost, and they are better. If you think there is any chance of Ukraine winning this war, like Alexander Stubb, and of course the idiotic commentators that we hear in the West, like the Sun newspaper, who say that the Russians are eating their own soldiers. If you believe this PR nonsense, more and more Ukrainians are going to die for no good reason. So there we are. That's the bit on that that we put out. And of course, we've got a bit more for you on these Garand drones. So let's have a little look here. They've now got turbojets on quite a few of these. They've got high explosive incendiary fragmentary warheads on the Garand 3s and a turbojet engine. On the Garand 2s, now they have online intelligence transmission, in-flight control, camera for online control, LiDAR sensors with high explosive fragmentation warheads, KPTM cassettes, which can basically drop off cluster anti-tank mines, and new incendiary warheads. They are developing these drones as they go. They can put 1,000 in the air at a time, Lembit. These drones are absolutely lethal. Here's one flying over Dnipro yesterday. almost no air cover left to bring them down. They're resorting to shooting at them with all sorts of weapons, Lembit. And of course, these and the Iskanders and everything else have been responsible for knocking out a lot of the electrical components. They've now got a greater range in terms of distance. And here's the kicker, Lembit. When they launch 1,000 of these, you don't know which ones are dummies, which ones are carrying the targeting mechanism for knocking missiles and helicopters out of the air, and which ones are carrying the high explosive for blowing places up, Lembit.
Yeah, well, I said ages ago that the Russians are now, although it is costing them lives, which is tragic, it's also true to say that Russia is using this as a test bed now. They're developing their equipment. They're not really being challenged. I would imagine what they're really trying to do is get a higher percentage of their drones through, because it's still quite resource hungry to lose 90% of them. But as you say, Ukraine's running out of gas and the West's running out of resolve. They don't really want to keep doing this. And add all that together, they're in doggy doos. They're in big trouble now. And I'm sorry to say, and it's tragic really to say this, that the only thing that's going to stop this is when the Ukrainian people say we've had enough of this corrupt Zelensky regime that's costing our loved ones lives and land. And I don't think we can expect the West to do anything to help, really, now that it's all chit chat and idle nonsense. So where do we stand? We stand on the threshold of a disaster, which will look like Ukraine having completely capitulated. I don't think they got much power to debate and to negotiate now, but there'll be absolutely none if this carries on. Because Russia is more or less saying that if you don't play ball, we're just going to carry on. See you on the other side. I don't think they want to own the whole of Ukraine. By the way, I don't think that. I just think they want to have their buffer zone.
Yeah, but of course, the longer they leave it, the more of Ukraine's going to disappear. Andy Ed.
How soon do you think, after all this is finished, that Europe will be going to Russia and begging Russia for business?
Well, the actual oil that they're taking has gone up this year compared to last year. So they're buying it under the table, Andy, and they're not letting people know. I mean, they've actually gone to India for some of it, and of course, India have been buying it from Russia. So, Lembit, let's have a quick chat about that, because the economics of this are completely, shall we say, all over the place in terms of the Europeans can talk a massively good game, but at the end of the day, they're going to do absolutely nothing, are they?
Well, they haven't done much. They've thrown money at it, but because they're basically incompetent, and I include Mark Rutte, the weirdo in charge of NATO, because they're incompetent, they can't make anything happen. That's the reality. And as a result of that, they end up in this farcical situation where nothing useful is going to transpire, just pain. And all of these videos you're showing me, it's distressing, because it's all about destruction, this relentless destruction. And where it ends, well, we know where it ends. It ends where Russia chooses to draw the line. And in the meantime, thousands a week continue to die. I take it still is thousands a week, is it?
It is, yeah. They're losing. They're losing on and around, I would say, close to, shall we say, 1,500 people. And we're going to show you.
Well, a day or a week?
A day. A day. This is not a week. They're losing. They're losing 1,500 a day. This is a lot of people. It's only one. It's around about 1.5 people per square kilometre of ground that they're sitting on. And I'm going to show you a little something here, Lembit. This is something called, or what we've termed, the Forest of Death, which is outside of Constantinople, and this has cost the Ukrainians 4,500 men to try and hold on to. Just have a look at the devastation of this, Lembit. It's like something out of Hiroshima, Lembit, and more Ukrainians are going to die. Now, that's only a half a mile long piece of forest on the edge of Constantinople. And somebody said, have you got a picture of that beforehand? No, I'm afraid I haven't, but I can get one for you, and you can have a look at it. But that is, I mean, just looking at that is enough surely for people to turn around and go, we can't have any more of this, surely, Lembit.
No, apparently not. Apparently we live in a society where they don't care. They really don't care. Because people like Starmer, who are sociopathic in my view and have no sense of the damage that they're doing, they just carry on feeding the meat grinder with other people's sons and daughters and husbands and wives and now fathers and maybe a few mums. And you just go, how can they possibly imagine this is okay? You know,
Quite incredible,
don't
isn't it?
get it. Yeah, I don't get it. So no, I don't have any optimism about this at all. I've no optimism at all about this. I think that this will carry on until it starts being, until people realize that the politicians realize it's beginning to look like a PR disaster for them. They don't realize this yet.
No, exactly that. Let's have a little talk about what Lavrov had to say. This is among some of the things he had to say. That they have driven themselves too far down the hostility towards Russia line, that we can't possibly start talking to anybody. It is most likely impossible to reach any agreement with the current EU leaders. Lavrov was absolutely scathing, and what he basically said, it was a question was, is it possible to restore relations with the EU? And he had to say this, we were not the ones who severed relations. It was not us who closed all doors to cooperation, whether in Russia or in contacts between Russia and individual EU member states, especially with such long-standing good historic friends and partners of ours as the Italians. European leaders have been saying for 4 years it's almost impossible to sit at the same table with Russia, that a strategic defeat must be inflicted on our country. And then suddenly Chancellor Merz says that Russia is a European country and that we should talk to it. And Lavrov said, what a revelation. That is why those who genuinely want to talk to us seriously, I would advise against making loud statements and then proudly surveying the audience whilst being able to do absolutely nothing. If there is a genuine interest, they should simply call, as diplomats do, without accusations, without proclamations like, I have just made such and such a threat, now I'll talk to Vladimir Putin. Emmanuel Macron has announced this yet again. Last year, Macron did call. Nothing he said in that phone conversation differed from what Paris, including Macron himself, had said publicly and continues to say. I cannot resist quoting Macron after his meeting in November 2025 with Zelensky. Russia itself chose the path of war. Nothing justified this war, not a single threat, only fakes. All this is in complete disregard of the truth, influences by the reflexes and instincts of a state that cannot reconcile with history. This for us is sheer rudeness, blatant disrespect towards Russia. We are above that, and we treat statements of this kind not even with contempt, but utter indifference. Of all people, a Frenchman cannot be unaware of Russia's history. Little dig at Napoleon there. You cannot fail to understand the history is not what the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaya Kallis, said about 19 wars unleashed by Russia in Europe over the past 100 years. History begins with Napoleon Bonaparte, continues with Adolf Hitler, who mobilized almost all of Europe to defeat and dismantle Russia. That is where history begins, and that is something our people will never forsake. If someone wishes to engage in dialogue, we will not refuse them, even understanding that it is most likely impossible to reach any agreement with current EU leaders because they have driven themselves so far down the Russophobia line. Your thoughts, Lembit?
I've nothing to add to that. Safe to say that when you listen to that kind of perspective, founded in history, clearly from a Russian perspective, critical but explanatory about those criticisms of Europe, and insightful in terms of its objectivity, in my view. And then you compare it to the utter nonsense we get from the likes of Kaya Kallis and others. It's not surprising that they aren't taking these talks. The Russians aren't taking the talk seriously. They're not dealing with serious people.
Yeah, absolutely. And just while we're on the subject, by the way, the USA has still not released the two sailors that they said they would release from the Ukrainian tanker that they boarded. And of course, the Russians did ask about that as well. They weren't, should we say, too enamored with the fact that that America hadn't already done that. Very much along the lines of they are saying, or the Russians are very much saying, that until we see something of substance from people, then of course we're just going to treat the war as ongoing. And something else that is hugely embarrassing. The Finnish had a wonderful, shall we say, set of maneuvers and everything else, where they had, shall we say, a mock-up with the Americans, Lembit, and they were told to take it very, very easy on the Americans for the simple fact that when they were doing the war games and everything else, they gave the American forces a bit of a doing. And there was an internal memo that went out saying, please, can you take it a bit easier on our American soldiers? And here's the report from it. In last year's joint Viking exercise in northern Norway, American troops struggled badly. Exercise commanders asked Finnish reservists who were playing the role of invaders in the Arctic war games to go easy on the Americans. The Finns had to be told to stop beating the Americans as it was demoralizing for them. That doesn't bode well. It's no wonder they've not put boots on the ground in Ukraine, is it, Lembit?
Well, it's no wonder. It's also rather surprising that these tough guys have to be given an easy ride. It's a bit sad, really. Certainly embarrassing, but at the same time, the most battle-hardened players in this particular conflict are the Russians. Lots of experience. Once again, you don't actually have to like the Russians to know what I'm saying is true. They've got lots of experience. They don't screw about. they're amazingly good at targeting without taking relentless extra prisoners. Creating relentless extra casualties. There could be some casualties, but the truth is that, well, there are casualties, but the truth is that they're comparatively low, to be completely ruthless about it. Comparatively low. So yeah, when I look at it all, when I add all that together, I'm thinking to myself, the Russians know what they're doing, and the Americans in the West don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're at it, the press ganging of Ukrainians goes on. But this one in a garage didn't quite turn out the way they wanted it to, Lemby. Let's have a little look. As you can see, there's two guys coming to grab a mechanic to take him away to the war. It doesn't quite turn out how they hoped. Wrong Gary.
Yeah, it was a bit of a blunder, but I'm not surprised. That is what happens when you mess with hard people who don't want to go and die for no reason.
No, absolutely. And of course, we will bring you some more of those, because there are more and more of those are beginning to now show up, which is quite strange. We're going to get into just to finish off here, because we've been quite a while on this. There is no sign of a peace deal in sight, Lembit. They're talking about meeting again on February the 2nd, and the Russians have said, if you want to, fine. But the Ukrainians are not going to give up any land. The Russians have turned around and said, we won't be bullied by anyone or coerced by anyone into giving up the SMO, the basically what we started out with the SMO. And America are still going with the idea that they can coerce them with talks of minerals and land and all sorts of things like that. And of course, you've still got the Americans inside of the Pentagon and inside of the State Department who still think that this war is winnable, as well as the Europeans, Lembic.
But do they really think it's winnable?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe that anymore.
We're going to turn around and say that there is absolutely no chance of peace whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
One of your favourites, Lembit. Let's have a little talk about this guy.
Let me start by paying tribute to the 457 of our armed services who lost their lives in Afghanistan. I will never forget their courage, their bravery, and the sacrifice that they made for their country. There are many also who were injured, some with life-changing injuries. And so I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country. If I had misspoken in that way or said those words, I would certainly apologise. We have a very close relationship with the US, and that is important for our security, for our defence and our intelligence, and it's very important we maintain that relationship. But it is because of that relationship that we fought alongside the Americans for our values in Afghanistan. And it was in that context that people lost their lives or suffered terrible injuries, fighting for freedom, fighting with our allies for what we believe in.
Well, if he'd have said somewhere else, then it might have been fairly okay. But as he said, Afghanistan, and of course, Starmer suggesting Trump should apologise. You have to remember, because really they should apologise, and so should we, for shooting babies in their bed and committing other heinous war crimes without being close to the combat area. Now, a senior British Special Forces officer warned that the failure to own up to our own criminal behaviour in Afghanistan by the SAS, including shooting 5 children in their beds would allow the regiment to descend into the sewer and sink to the levels of despotic regimes. Now, devastating evidence about a cover-up by special forces was released on Monday, and there is more to come tomorrow, by an independent judge-led inquiry into repeated allegations of extrajudicial executions by elite British troops in Afghanistan. You would have thought somebody would be briefing Keir Starmer on this, so he didn't keep putting his foot in it, wouldn't you, Lembit?
No. Weak leaders surround themselves with weak advisors, and that's what's happened here. So no, I'm not surprised. Also, he doesn't understand military matters. He just gets it wrong continuously. I think we need to be clear here. Keir Starmer is a middle-ranking councillor in terms of his capability. He's not even a good for MP, let alone Prime Minister. A man so weak that he has blocked his main challenger, Andy Burnham, from being back in Parliament. It's unbelievable. No, so I'm not surprised. He's surrounded by very poor advisors because he's so poor himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
That's okay. Let's get into this now then, because while we're talking about everything that's going on here, we did remember tell you about this. Let's have a listen to Delcy Rodriguez.
En los escenarios que nos habíamos planteado que podría darse un ataque, nunca imaginamos que cruzarían esa línea. No.
Now, she was trying to, shall we say, dig herself out of a hole because she's done exactly. Let's have a look at that. We just put the wrong one on.
Las amenazas vinieron desde el primer minuto que ellos secuestraron al presidente. Nos dieron a Diosdado, a Jorge y a mí 15 minutos para responder, si no nos iban a matar. Y frente a la información que nos habían dicho que los habían asesinado, no que estaban secuestrados, nosotros dijimos, estamos listos a correr la misma suerte.
Yes, but you didn't, Delcy. Now the cat's out of the bag, Lembit, about the fact that they had all these meetings in Doha, and Delcy and Jorge Rodriguez agreed to roll over and stand basically his guard down so that they could get hold of Maduro. There's a massive attempt now to try and cover up the fact that the Rodriguezes were in bed with the CIA for this overthrow. Delcy Rodriguez saying they told us we had 15 minutes or they were going to kill us. You would have thought they'd have been able to get ready for that sort of thing. And of course, they said, well, okay, you will have to kill us then, but they didn't. What a surprise. The other thing there, Lembit, as Trump has come out with this nonsense about a discombobulator, we turned this on. It knocked out all the Chinese rockets and Russian rockets. They weren't able to fire any at all. The discombobulator, see bribe, Lembit. The nonsense that they're trying. The nonsense that they're trying to spin here. And remember that 14 days ago, we told you where the meetings took place at the Bentley Hotel in Doha. And now we have The Guardian and other outlets also reporting that the CIA did a secret deal with the Rodriguezes to overthrow and literally catch hold of Maduro. And now they're busy trying to spin it, Lembit.
Yes, well, what do you expect? They're just. Well, Venezuela's not. I feel sorry for Venezuela to an extent because I think they've been screwed around royally. But yeah, it's hard to be sympathetic whenever the allies are so dishonest. They're no different to the others. They're no different to the others, really. What can I say? I wasn't there. You suspected that there was insider trading, and it seems that there was.
Yes.
As a result of that, well, we find ourselves in an ignominious position where the Venezuelans' cat is coming out of the bag, and it looks a bit like the old cat.
Very much along
Meow.
those lines. It does seem very much along those lines, doesn't it? And of course, we're going to see more of that. While we're on the subject, there is some stuff that we have to talk about, of course, when we're talking about America and what's going on. You would not have failed to notice this happening That's the wrong one. Of course, you would not have failed to see all sorts of horrible things happening, including the death of a so-called protester. Now, have a little look at this. Now, this is a guy, Lembit, who is in Minneapolis, who was turned up with a mobile phone in his hand, but he did have a gun on him. But he's been shot by somebody from ICE. Let's have a little look about this. Now, he's clearly been shot by ICE. This is another protester out there, Lembit. Now, we had, of course, the lesbian in the car who ended up getting shot. This is the second death where it looks as though, shall we say, they've gone OTT and they've ended up killing someone. And of course, everybody is now out on the street.
I was actually going to play some clips of him today in the show, but
now we've got ICE out on the streets. This is the second thing, Lembit. Now, on the first one, I was very, very critical indeed, because this guy, as far as I'm concerned, he shot this woman from point blank range. But this guy turned up at this protest with a weapon, with a sidearm, strapped to his hip, Lembit. I mean, if you go into a protest, given what's already happened with ICE, and you know that that's happened, why are you showing up to a protest with a firearm? I know it's an open carry and everything else, and you've got a permit for it, but you wouldn't show up to a protest with a firearm, would you, Lembit?
No, I wouldn't. I don't know the guy. I obviously don't know about him. Obviously, I don't know the guy. I didn't know the guy. What is difficult is that I can't tell. I can't tell why they killed him. I think that these people are very active. I think that's what's happening all the time. So I don't know what percentage of deaths is occurring in terms of the overall amount of activity by these people. But it's a big problem. I mean, it's a huge problem because it looks bad. There are roughly 70 shootings a day in the United Kingdom. Sorry, correction, United States. 70 fatal shootings, half of which are suicides, the other half are homicides. And I really would like to see what the statistics are on this. Is this a reflection on ICE or a reflection on the gun laws in America?
Yeah, it is one of those. Now, before I had great sympathy with the woman. The fact that she was there was stupid. At the end of the day, what are these people doing? I mean, because obviously you have got some gun-happy lemons in the ICE group, and they are trying to catch hold of people and chuck them away, put these people away or get them away from America because they're in the country illegally. Since when did this become a sort of political football and a game where you can play with people's lives like this? I mean, let's have a listen to what Cynthia Nixon had to say here.
The Secretary of Homeland Security has been spreading morally reprehensible, disgusting lies about the cold-blooded execution of the young man, Alex Preddy, who was gunned down in the streets of Minneapolis today. I'm going to read a statement from Alex's parents who have asked that the record be set straight about who their son was and what actually happened. Please do everything you can to share their statement far and wide. We are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans who he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact. I do not throw around the term hero lightly. However, his last thought and act was to protect a woman. The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He had his phone in his right hand, and his empty left hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the woman ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man.
It's just people being used on all sides here, isn't it, Lambert? I mean,
Yeah.
I have sympathy for the woman. Are there idiots inside ICE who don't know what they're doing and probably trigger happy with guns? Yes, there are. Are there people turning up to protest when they shouldn't be there because they've no right to be there protesting this and wearing sidearms? Yes, there are. So there's idiocy on both sides here, isn't there, Lambert?
Yeah, it's once again, I'm a bit more circumspect about it because I don't really know. I don't like doing trial by media, and so I don't really know what the detailed circumstances are of what took place. I feel that this is a pretty bad example of a mistake, of a bad mistake. I don't think they'll necessarily have done it on purpose, but I think it's a bad example of a mistake. And I think it's because these people are comparatively inexperienced, the ones who are going out there.
Yeah.
So they do get the willies and they pull the gun out and they shoot because they're either angry or scared or they feel a sense of entitlement because of Trump. I don't know. That's what I think. I do think that Trump is probably finding some favor with all this, but this is all very it's quite likely that a lot of people privately say, good on you. This is the thing.
Yeah.
It's quite likely a lot of people say, well, I don't want to say this publicly, but we want to show them if they come in here illegally. The problem is they're killing American countrymen, which isn't a very good look, let's be honest.
Absolutely. And of course, we don't want to leave you on the first half of the show. We don't want to leave you with thinking everything is doom and gloom. Lembit, feminists striking back at the patriarchy. Nothing will advance their cause as wonderfully as this. Your thoughts on this, Lembit? This is a concert given by women who want to stress how bad the patriarchy is. And we'll get Lembit's thoughts after we play this short video. Lembit, that'll do wonders for the patriarchy.
Yeah, it's just repulsive. It's just repulsive. And I'd demand my money back if I'd been there. It's just there's no grace in that at all. It doesn't mean anything. It's just obviously angry feminists, and that's not really my bag.
Where does this anger come from, though, Lembit?
I don't know, childhood trauma, or maybe a middle class sense of entitlement. It's very hard to know why people do this. I can't tell. And I guess I'm not going to try to start guessing, particularly now, because I can't tell what what motivates people to behave like that. It's just embarrassing. Imagine if they're your mother and you see this.
Not good. I disown her. It's not my mother. I'm an only child. One of those. I was an orphan. Let's get into a couple of other things just before we end the first part of the show. They made an ice slide in Kamchatka, Lembe, for the children. Have a look at this. You can have fun with almost anything, Lembit. Quite amazing. And a brilliant thing that has happened every now and again, when you get really, really strong bouts of cold weather, then, of course, you get refractions. And, of course, when you get these refractions, and trust me, it's not AI, you get some wonderful, wonderful things. Now, when you get a very cold spell and then you get a sharp frost, you get sometimes things called light pillars. These happened in Canada, and of course, this is when the Northern Lights meet, shall we say, at the same time, which is something quite wonderful. And of course, there are some spectacular signs in the sky, and you get those light pillars. The other thing that is quite incredible, I don't know whether you've ever seen the two suns, Lembit, but it is a refraction of light that causes two suns over the Earth.
Такой прикол надо. Тут два солнца встает одновременно.
That's remarkable.
Quite incredible. And that happens apparently about once every 6 or 7 years, where you get the exact light hitting at the right time in those cold weather conditions to enable that. If you've enjoyed the first half of the show, we've got a lot more to dig into in the second half of the show. Come across to warrenthornton.com. But of course, there are some things that we can't show you on mainstream media, and that's what we'll be getting on with in the second half. As I say, you can see us on Unprecedented TV, and of course, with Lembit Opic, and of course, please come across, and of course, you can see the full shows over only at warrenthornton.com.